Test anxiety can be very challenging for a lot of students, and it can turn the process of studying for and taking an exam into a miserable experience. And some students hate tests so much that they just simply avoid taking tests as much as possible, and then they end up missing out on opportunities like improving their ACT and SAT scores for college acceptance and scholarships, or saving money on college tuition, potentially thousands, by taking CLEP exams. Now, I'm not a therapist or medical professional, and if you struggle with chronic crippling anxiety, then I strongly encourage you to see a therapist. But test anxiety is a very common experience, and for a lot of people, just making a few changes in their thought patterns and habits can go a really long way toward reducing or even eliminating test anxiety. And I have some ideas that could potentially make a massive difference for you. So let's start out by just talking about what anxiety looks like. So it can look different for everyone. For some people, it's a set of physical symptoms like a racing heart, sweating, feeling nauseous. I know for me, my jaw tends to feel tight, my vision gets a little blurry. It can be different for everyone, and it could also be when you're having racing thoughts and when you keep ruminating on something negative or coming up with various disaster scenarios in your head. And for some people, this anxiety can be so overwhelming that they just freeze and they try to distract themselves from those negative thoughts and feelings by binging Netflix, shopping online, scrolling through social media, or whatever your distraction of choice may be. So these various anxious reactions that people can have, like those examples that I just mentioned, they not only cause a lot of time to be wasted that could have been spent productively, but they also are extremely draining on the physical body. So one metaphor that I like to use to think about this is the idea that the energy in our human body is similar to the gas in the gas tank of a car. So the idea is that everybody wakes up with a certain amount of energy in their metaphorical energy tank every day. And what they do with their day determines how that energy gets used. So ideally, we want to use our energy on things that bring us joy and help us achieve our goals. But the thing that we have to watch out for is that negative thoughts and feelings are massive energy drainers. And when we get caught in a loop of negative thoughts and feelings, it's like pressing that like a gas pedal of the car to the floor and just burning through energy at a rapid rate. And you're not actually going anywhere, or at least you're not going in the direction that you want to be going. And the next thing you know, you're left with a fraction of the energy that you started out with to actually use to enjoy your day and to work towards your goals. So this is a big reason why we want to take control of our mindset, and we want to do what we can so that those negative thoughts and feelings don't get out of control. Now, I definitely want to say that negative emotion is not all bad. In fact, sometimes negative emotion can be beneficial and productive. It's important to recognize your negative emotions and accept them and allow yourself to feel them. It's only when we accept and feel our emotions that we're able to work through them. But there's a difference between experiencing a negative emotion and allowing it to pass versus dwelling on it and perpetuating it with more negative thoughts and feelings. That's what we want to avoid. We want to develop the self-awareness and the skills that we need to be able to recognize when our negative emotions are no longer serving us, and that way we can move through them and focus on something empowering. Now, I want you to imagine something with me. I want you to imagine an idealized scenario. So what if you never experienced another ounce of anxiety again for the rest of your life? So you no longer have those knee-jerk reactions. What if you replaced every minute of that in your life with positive, powerful, deliberate decisions to stay focused and move towards your goals? And what if every step that you took from now on was a step taken joyfully and in a positive forward direction? What would that kind of life look like for you? What could you achieve? And how amazing would that life be? I think that that's a powerful thought exercise because it really reframes the way that we think about stress and anxiety. For example, for me personally, I used to think that whenever I was successful at something, that I was successful at it because I stressed out about it. I really thought that all that worry and stress is what gave me the push that I needed to succeed. But over time, I've finally realized that my past successes actually occurred despite all that stress that I put myself through. Because I'm so much more effective whenever I am consistently working happily towards my goals. And when I'm not allowing stress and anxiety to drain my energy and basically rob me of energy that could have been used productively. Okay, so now let's talk some real life examples of how you could experience test anxiety and how you can respond to it. So let's start by talking about those physical anxiety symptoms. So what can you do when your mind and heart are racing and you're feeling nauseous and just generally feeling sick physically from the anxiety? I know something that I experience personally is that my jaw feels tight and I notice that my vision's not as clear. I'll like struggle to track with my eyes and I'm sensitive to the light. I have found that the most powerful thing I can do to relieve those physical anxiety symptoms is something called a release meditation. Some of you may want to turn this off as soon as you heard the word meditation come out of my mouth, but hear me out. This is a very specific technique that I learned from Brendon Burchard. If you haven't heard of Brendon Burchard, he is a high performance coach and author that has some really incredible material, and I strongly encourage you to go look him up. But you can Google Brendon Burchard Release Meditation, and that's Burchard is B-U-R-C-H-A-R-D, Brendon Burchard Release Meditation. And he has a YouTube video that walks you through exactly how to do his release meditation. And so I've been listening to Brendon Burchard for years, and I never actually tried this release meditation for a long time because I just honestly didn't think it would be that beneficial. But once I actually started using it, I found it to be a total game changer. So using this technique has turned some really rough days for me when I was really struggling into some effective days and even enjoyable days. So what the release meditation is that you simply sit upright with your eyes closed and you repeat the word release in your mind, just really focusing on that mantra, release. At the same time, you breathe deeply and slowly, and you try to release all the physical tension in your body. So you're really focusing on getting into a completely relaxed physical state, all while repeating that mantra, release. Then the next step that I take that I find particularly powerful is to also visualize releasing anything that has happened in your day before the current moment. You definitely want to release any drama of the day or any negative thoughts you were having, but you also want to release any activities or tasks of the day. It's like you're signaling to your body and your mind that any conversations you had earlier in the day, any events that took place, or any tasks that you engaged in are now done and complete. And you are starting fresh with a clean slate. You are letting go of any tension that you could be carrying with you from earlier in the day so that you can be fully engaged in the moment and you can move forward as your best self and your highest self. The idea behind the release meditation technique is that doing things creates tension in the body, especially if you're a high achiever and you're really challenging yourself. Doing hard things creates tension, and that tension accumulates until you intentionally release it. So Brendan recommends doing the release meditation for 20 minutes. And I think that that's a great time frame for when you find yourself in the thick of anxiety. After doing a 20-minute release meditation, you will emerge feeling so much more relaxed, and you receive this wave of energy and motivation. The way I use release meditation personally is by doing multiple mini release meditations throughout my day that are just a few minutes each. Even 1 minute is beneficial if I feel that's all I can fit in. Using the release meditations in that way really helps me prevent the anxiety from hitting me in the first place. And if I have an especially challenging day ahead, then I will intentionally do a mini release meditation after I accomplish each major task of the day. So I can end up doing a few minutes of release meditation every hour or two throughout my day. And with each release meditation, my goal is to release the tension of the previous task. And I visualize how I'm going to approach the rest of my day as the best version of myself, and how I'm going to approach the next task ahead of me with excellence. Okay, so now that we've talked about what you can do when you feel those physical anxiety symptoms setting in, now I want to talk about the mindset side of things specific to test anxiety itself. So students can experience test anxiety leading up to an exam and or during the exam. So let's start off by talking about the anticipation anxiety that students can experience in the days leading up to an exam. For me personally, when I experience anxiety leading up to an event like a test, I find it really empowering to choose to interpret that anxiety as nothing more than just a signal to my mind that I need to prepare. I choose to interpret that anxiety as just a signal to prepare versus choosing to interpret it as a judgment on myself as a person or my capability. Because it's easy sometimes to think that because I feel anxious, that means I don't have what it takes, or I am not good under pressure. But that's not true, because everybody experiences anxious feelings. Even the most capable people in the world experience anxious feelings. So instead of giving anxiety power over me in that way, I choose to interpret it as nothing more than a signal that I have some work to do to prepare. And then it is important to remember that whatever the outcome, regardless of what score you receive on this test ahead of you, what's most important is who you become in the process and how you grow as a person. So give yourself permission to fail, and don't expect yourself to be perfect. Just make a commitment to give your best effort, because that's all that really matters in the end. One more specific technique that I recommend is that when you're studying, you can set aside a specific period of time for planning and evaluating your progress. And you could set aside that time for either the beginning or the end of your study session. So each time that you sit down to study, you're going to decide how much time you're going to spend focused on studying, and then when you're going to allow yourself to start evaluating the progress that you've made. So let's say you sit down at the library at 3 p.m. and you decide that you're going to focus on studying for at least an hour and a half. So you know that you won't allow yourself to start evaluating your progress until at least 4:30. Then after 4:30 rolls around, once you're ready to start evaluating that progress, you can allow yourself to engage in those activities. So you can start reflecting on what you've accomplished. You could quiz yourself to find your weak points, decide what you're going to study more, decide what you need to study next, those sorts of things. The point here is to isolate those activities to a specified time period, and not to just allow yourself to start engaging in those activities anytime you think about it in the middle of a study session. And this is important because when you're studying your material, you need to be able to focus entirely on learning and understanding. Don't worry about time. Don't worry about progress. Don't worry about anything. Just dive into the learning. Having dedicated periods of time where you're 100% focused on your learning process allows you to study more efficiently, and you actually end up achieving your goals a lot faster. Now, I understand that it can be challenging to block out those thoughts and worries about your progress while you're studying, especially when you're studying a more challenging subject or topic. And sometimes with those more difficult topics, you can do everything right and be 100% focused on your studying, focused on learning during your study session, and still be disappointed with your results at the end. And I just want you to know that that's totally normal and it's okay. The reason why I say that is that most people think of studying as this linear process where you consistently see results in exact proportion to the amount of time you spend studying. And the way I like to think about it is by comparing learning to hiking. We tend to think about learning as if you're hiking up a mountain, and the more time you spend hiking, the more altitude you gain, and the closer you get to summiting that mountain. But in reality, learning is a lot more like hiking among plateaus rather than a mountain. So with plateaus, you can travel a long distance and never gain any altitude. And then suddenly you'll reach that point where the next level of the plateau begins and you gain a tremendous amount of altitude in a really short distance. I say that to remind you that just as long as you're focused on studying and you're giving your best effort to learn, you may not see measurable results, but you are making progress. It's just happening in a way that you're not yet aware of and you're not yet able to measure. But eventually you will reach the point where you suddenly pass that threshold into seeing measurable results. You just have to be patient and trust the process. You definitely want to keep trying new things. I wouldn't recommend reading the same sentence over and over again, hoping that it suddenly makes sense to you. Seek out new sources of information, try new methods of studying, and eventually you will reach your aha moment. All right, so now let's talk about what you can do to prepare yourself for testing day. So I think there's a couple things that you can do to prepare yourself ahead of the test that will really make a massive difference to reducing or even eliminating your test anxiety on the day of the test. So the first thing you can do is get confident. And I know you may be annoyed that I even said that because you're probably thinking that you simply don't have the confidence and you can't just decide to be confident. But I don't really think that's true. And the reason why I say that is because if you think about it, we all know someone who has no knowledge or skill in an area, but for some reason they are ridiculously confident in themselves in that area. And we also all know somebody who is amazingly capable in an area, but they have no confidence in themselves. And I think the reason behind that is that confidence is not some mystical thing that just gets bestowed upon us just because we pass some level of skill in an area. It's actually a mindset that we choose to step into. So I personally believe that confidence is a commitment to doing your best and learning as you go so that you can continue to do better over time. So I'm going to say that again. Confidence is just a commitment to doing your best and learning as you go so you can continue to do better over time. As long as you make that commitment, you know that you're going to figure things out. So I really think that confidence comes down to just a decision to make that commitment. So once you make that choice to step into your confidence, you can really amplify it by coming up with an identity statement that integrates the idea of being a great test taker into your identity. And the more outrageous you make that identity statement, the better. So I'm going to give some examples that may sound ridiculous, but that's the point. We're aiming for outrageous, okay? So an example of an identity statement could be, let's say, I'm a beast at test taking. I am able to absolutely dominate a test with confidence because I know the secret to testing success. I just read the question really slowly to be sure I know exactly what the question is asking, and then I answer it to the best of my ability and I move forward. So that's an example of an identity statement you could have that integrates being a great test taker into your identity. I like that identity statement. It's kind of long, but I like it anyways. And I like it because it's outrageous, it's confident, and it has a real tried and true action plan for success embedded into the statement. Okay, so my number one tip to prepare yourself for test day was to get confident. And my second tip that I have for you is to prepare your physical body to be in an optimal state on testing day. So set yourself up for success by getting a good night of rest, drinking plenty of water, and eating a healthy meal. And maybe it could help you if you put a reminder in your calendar on your phone to cook a healthy meal a day or two before the test. That way on the day of the test, you can just heat it up and eat it, and you don't have to worry about cooking. I know it can be tempting to stay up late and cram before the test, but the best thing you can do for yourself on test day is to show up energized with a clear mind and feeling good. That way, even if you didn't end up studying as much as you feel like you should have, what you will have is the mental clarity to answer the questions correctly on the topics that you did study. Okay, so we've talked about how you can respond to anticipation anxiety while you're studying for the test. And then we talked about what you can do to prepare yourself ahead of time for testing day, like coming up with an empowering identity statement and preparing yourself physically by getting a good night of rest and eating a healthy meal. I really believe that if you study effectively and you prepare yourself ahead of the test in these ways, that goes a really long way towards reducing or even eliminating the test anxiety that you feel during the actual test. Now let's go ahead and talk about what you can do if the anxiety hits you hard on testing day or in the middle of your test. So there are a couple reasons why you can experience anxiety in the middle of a test. I want to address a couple of those reasons, and that way, if you're bombarded with anxious, negative thoughts in the middle of a test, you can have thought things through in advance and you'll be better equipped to respond to that on the day of the test. So I think one of the common reasons why people experience test anxiety is that they have just bad memories of bombing a test in the past. These bad memories of past failed exams can create this negative association in your mind to test taking. And you may have even failed a test in the past simply because you got so anxious and you couldn't focus. But regardless of the reason that you may have failed a test in the past, it's important to remember that what happened in the past is not a statement on who you are and what you're capable of. It's simply an event in the past that serves as part of your learning journey and your growth process. When I reframe bad memories in that way, it really takes a weight off my shoulders. Whatever the reason for the anxiety that you can experience during a test, it's important to remember that those negative thoughts do not serve you. Instead of getting caught up in those negative thoughts and feelings, you could do a mini release meditation like we discussed earlier. And once you release that tension, ask yourself, what state would you be in if you were just dominating this test? Like, what state would you physically be in if you were absolutely confident and you were acing the test? So when I say what state would you be in, I mean, how would you be sitting in your chair? Like, how would you be holding yourself? What position would your shoulders and head be in? And what would you be focused on? What are the exact thoughts that you would be thinking in your mind? So ask yourself those questions and get yourself in the right state. You could call it a confident state or a successful state. And then to really amplify it, repeat your identity statement and then get back at it taking that test. Another common source of test anxiety, and this is one that I've typically experienced, is simply getting fixated on what I didn't study enough or on all the ways that I'm not as prepared as I would like to be on test day. So if this is something that you deal with, The best advice that I can give you is to simply choose to let go of the things that you can't control. You could go ahead and put a reminder in your phone that will pop up for you on the day of the test that says, when I'm under pressure, I will be the one that remains calm and focused and chooses to let go of what I cannot control. I think that's a really empowering reminder for any day, but especially on the day of a test. Because on the day of your test, that is not the time to worry about what you didn't study or what you wish you would have done differently. Instead, take a deep breath and choose to let go of the things you can't control and focus on what you do know and what you can do. And there are some things that you always can do no matter what. You can enter the test with a calm, focused, and confident energy. You can choose to breathe slowly and deeply to maintain that sense of calm. You can read each question very slowly and carefully to be sure you know exactly what the question's asking. You can answer every question to the best of your ability using the knowledge that you do have. And if you don't know exactly the right answer and you want to spend more time thinking, you can choose one of the options that you think could be right and then flag the question to come back to it later after you've answered all the other questions. I really hope that now you feel prepared for any anxiety that you could experience around your upcoming test. But there's one last thing I want you to do. I want you to stop what you're doing and take a minute to visualize yourself studying for and taking this test. Imagine yourself committing to consistent, focused study periods, and imagine yourself setting aside specific periods of time for planning and progress evaluation. Imagine yourself diving into the material and making new distinctions and becoming more proficient in your subject over time. Now imagine yourself getting a good night of rest the night before the test, drinking plenty of water, and eating a healthy meal the day before the test. Imagine yourself showing up to the testing center on time, calm, confident, and ready to take the test. Now visualize yourself taking the test with a calm and focused mind. You read each question carefully to be sure you know exactly what the question is asking. Then you answer the question to the best of your ability and you move on to the next question. And then when the test is complete, you see a passing score on the screen. You walk out of the testing center with a printed passing score in your hand and with that awesome, rewarding feeling. Go ahead and plan now what you're gonna do to reward yourself after you pass this test. I'm excited for you because I know that you are gonna bring that vision you just had into reality. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, or follow if you're watching on TikTok. Also for YouTube, don't forget to click that little bell button that notifies you every time we release a new video. If there's anything in particular that I mentioned in this video that you found especially valuable, please leave a comment down below. It's just to let me know. I know this account is pretty new, but so far I've only had crickets. I've gotten no comments, and I'd really like to know if I'm helping anybody out there. The goal of this channel is not just to help you save time and money in college, but also to unlock your potential to perform at your best.